The New Yorker published a piece about Ukraine, a big, nice long read called Ukraine's Democracy in Darkness. Ukraine. It's about Ukraine. Let's guess, Mark, who wrote that article? Maybe a Ukrainian wrote that article. What do you think?
Maybe it was American, like it's New Yorker, right? It's in New York, probably American who has knowledge in Ukraine, right? In Ukrainian studies professor, no? Something like that?
I would guess maybe it could be like a person who speaks Ukrainian language, right? Or has been to Ukraine, or I don't know.
Or lived in Ukraine for a while.
Yeah. No, screw that, fuck that. That article was written by a Russian again.
Oh!
Yay!
Because Ukraine it's just, look at the map. It's just essentially Russia. If you just make Russia a little bit bigger, they have similar alphabet, isn't it?
It's just, literally we're taking anybody whose native language is Slavic now, and they are literally deemed as an expert on a completely different country. So, reporter at large at The New Yorker Masha Gessen has written an article about how Ukraine is so deeply entrenched in darkness and despair and losing the war and autocracy that, that piece was necessary. I guess it was necessary, this in-depth analysis. Anyway, my first, before we even look into the article, I would like to just yet again stress the fact that are there not many Ukrainians who speak English that the New Yorker or any other media could commission this article to? Mark, we here sit like two people in fairly good command of English language. I'm not saying we should be writing that article. I'm just saying that there are precedent of Ukrainians actually speaking English and being coherent and, using big boy words and are completely able to write. But no. We need this Russian dissident to analyze Ukraine and make sure, I'm so
Fun fact, people who actually have knowledge in Ukraine are Ukrainians, speaking English, writing about Ukraine in English, are cited in this same article. Masha Gessen was talking to them. Natalia Gumenyuk, for instance. Yeah, they know them. Like, they could make Natalia Gumenyuk write this article, right?
No.
No, it's impossible, because only Russians are intelligent enough to write articles for Western media. Ukrainians are not intelligent.
Ukraine.
Yeah. We are not. We are dum-dums. Boom, boom. Boop, boop.
You don't know, poop, poop, don't know, can't speak English,
democracy,
don't know.
sorry.
No election, excuse me, don't know, I need a Russian expert to explain to me democracy, which
right.
I find hilarious.
And you like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't a great article, or just a normal article, or just an article with several mistakes, but normally good. No, it is not. It is. If you wanted to, you couldn't be that anti-Ukrainian in it if you wanted to. She made
First of all, before you even go into the content, which I don't think we're going to go too in depth, because talking about an article that was written that you can read by yourself is a weird place. We're just going to mention some things, but the tone in which this article is written is so ridiculously condescending, as if it's not an ethnic Russian explaining democracy to anyone. Just let that sink in for a second. So the person who lived in Russia sometime and then moved to the United States as a dissident, not allowed to be there, will lecture Ukrainians and explain to the world how Ukraine's democracy is in darkness, whatever that means.
No, this narrative is also fake. It's a fake narrative. Ukrainians are literally dying, not for land, as she wrote, by the way, not for some magical, nationalism or something like that. Ukrainians are dying for democracy. This is the only reason Russia attacked. This is the only reason Ukrainians are fighting, because they want to elect their officials on their territories and protect their families and have rights and all of that. This is literally what Ukraine is fighting for. Ukraine is trying to enter European Union. Ukraine is trying to do reforms, even throughout the full-scale invasion. And despite all of that, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's just like, yeah, well, yeah, they like, she writes that, yeah, they are trying, they have some LGBT rights law, like something like that, but it's stuck in parliament. Jesus fucking Christ!
Yeah,
There's parliament.
There's parliament in a war-torn country which is functioning. Like, just while we're on this, a good like acquaintance of mine has written the other day about this article that as a Ukrainian, you simply cannot win. If Ukraine held elections, they would have been accused of them being rigged, undemocratic, impossible to monitor, risking people's lives while they gather at the polling stations that are unconstitutional because Constitution prohibits Ukrainians to hold elections while there's war. But if you don't have elections during the war, then you get this article. Then you get, there's supposed to be elections. Zelensky only promised to run for 1 year. I am in no mean a fan of President Zelensky. It's a completely different story. But he promised not to run the second time in 2019, couple of years before the full-scale invasion, couple of years before the whole shebang happened. Things change. I'm not saying if we were in peacetime, sure, you could throw that argument in his face and be like, well, you promised. Yeah, sure. What the hell is this even? Like, back in 2019, Brzezinski promised that he would not. And then you could even try to, like, as an analyst, as a writer, you could even argue a fact that in a way Ukrainian government, if I wanted to protect them or analyze them from different angles, you could even say that they're somehow, imprisoned by the war. Maybe they don't want to be politicians. I mean, they probably do. But the point is, you don't know because we haven't been in a situation like this for a long, long, long time where half of your country is occupied and you have to manage it this way. And yeah, half of the country is managed one way because those are like frontline zones. The other part of the country is managed in a different way because this is war does. Those are extraordinary circumstances. And yet she tries to analyze it from the standpoint of 2019, where President Zelensky, who was a completely different person then, that is just a fact, with a completely different team, is like, yeah, well, he promised he wouldn't run the second time. And she goes, yeah, they became politicians like the ones they promised that they wanted to purge, entrenched. Well, excuse me, didn't president switch over half of the government? Is that entrenching anyone? Like, what is this? What is this? This is not even factually correct. And then Ukrainians, all the polls in Ukraine show that Ukrainians don't want to take part in elections, not only because this is prohibited, not only because by the constitution, not only because it would be a financial burden on the country's sad budget, but also it's quite frankly super dangerous. And yet nobody is willing to listen to Ukrainians actually using big boy words to formulate their agenda. No, she's going to be like, from her high, this mahogany soapbox fucking view of a Democrat runaway Russian that, they're, sinking darkness.
She's Russian, right? She, let's be honest. Russians don't really understand democracy. They never built one. They never experienced one. Even like those who live in the United States, they don't understand what real democracy is and what's building democracy is. What Masha Gessen doesn't understand about elections, and many, by the way, people in the West don't understand as well. Free and fair elections is not only people going to the polls and stuffing their ballots in the box. It's not only that. Free and fair elections is also when you have freedom to advertise, to campaign, to do stuff. Half, a million of Ukrainian men and women are fighting in the war. They don't have their freedom. They are in the army where you, and surprise, surprise, don't have your freedom. You are you have to obey whatever your
commanding officer is, because that's what military is.
You don't have freedom. You don't have weekends. You can't go campaigning. If people who want to be elected are in the army right now and who are conscripted, who are drafted to the military, and they don't have freedom,
nobody speaks about that. Nobody speaks about that. Nobody.
and also if you want to have free and fair elections, how, like, what if you want to become a president, and then you are obliged to go and serve in the army, right? So then you can be just drafted to the army the day you want to become like a candidate. There is no possibility of free and fair elections when your rights are limited during wartime. And to understand that, you should understand what wartime is. Wartime is not when your military going on the other continent and fighting some homeless black people in sandals. It's not war. It's just like it's something else. War is when you're like bombarded every fucking day. You have air alerts. You have rockets striking your residential buildings. This is war. You cannot talking about free and fair elections in this in this terms is fucking insane. People who do that, the only reason to do that is to harm Ukraine, to say, "Ha, look at them, they're not democratic. This means we shouldn't help them, right?" And this is what people who try to obstruct aid to Ukraine, military aid to Ukraine, are for. More to that, if there's no military aid to Ukraine right now, it can be captured by Russia in the next several months. What elections are we talking about? We are talking about survival of the country.
Yeah. What elections are we talking about if there will be no country to hold them in? For the new politician to rule this country. I mean, if that even happened. I mean, and honestly, let me be an asshole here for a second and say everybody's so freaked out about other countries like Ukraine and Russia meddling into other countries' politics. Well, for some reason, people from abroad have this constant urge to meddle in Ukrainian internal politics, which I find ridiculous. Yes, of course, I know the fact that because the predisposition of Ukraine receiving more financial aid and military aid from other countries is following the rules and following the 7 checkpoint list of Brussels or whatever, and we are doing that anyway, because even if that checklist didn't exist, we would still happily do it, because this is the country, the path the country has chosen in 2014 minimum. So that is not a discussion. Ukrainians are, want to have a free, fair, democratic country free of corruption and all of that. However, elections have nothing to do with corruption. Elections, show me a country that had elections during World War II. Like, show me, did that happen? No. And yet now every single country, be it a friend or foe, if I was Russian, if I was President Putin, the thing I would love most is for Ukraine to have elections now. And how dare these people even assume that, isn't democracy about will of the people? Didn't Ukrainians literally say with their mouths that they don't want elections, and yet nobody listens to them? Nobody's willing to hear them.
No, because Ukrainians are dumb-dumbs. We should ask Russians what they think about Ukrainian elections.
Educated in Russia. By the way, speaking of asking Russians, I want to come back to the matter of the author of this article, Masha Gessen. How is she qualified? To talk about Ukraine? Is she did she go study Ukrainian studies somewhere? Nothing in her bio even remotely qualifies her as an expert on Ukraine.
She's never lived here.
She doesn't speak the language. I don't know, never read a book, I guess, about I don't even know, man. The thing is, I read her biography. We did look through it. There's nothing there that makes her remotely an expert on Ukraine or, democracy, screw that. She's Russian. That just by default is a very weird thing to do. But she seems to be an expert on anything. LGBT rights, Russian democracy, Putin. She was editor-in-chief of some nature magazine somewhere in Russia. And now she is an expert on Ukraine as well. Why? Because her native language has Cyrillic alphabet? How do they even how do you even pick these authors? What is the motivation behind let's commission? Or did she just come there and brought them her article, and nobody in the New Yorker staff was why is this are you qualified? What? Obviously she traveled to Ukraine now because she obviously interviewed these people, but that doesn't mean anything. I've been to Egypt. Do you see me writing articles about Egypt? I've traveled to Turkey back in 2013 with my mom. I've stayed there for a whole of 10 days. I guess I'm qualified to write for the New Yorker. Right. Because I have friends in Poland who are Polish politicians. Let me, write a
Melania,
huge
I'm
article
sorry.
about Russian,
Melania.
Polish democracy. Yes.
You're not qualified for anything in the Western elites or Western media, because you know why? You're not Russian.
Yeah. Damn.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You should be Russian, dissident, or whatever, to do that stuff. And you know what? Like, we Ukrainians are tired of this. We are trying to ask Western media to stop publishing Russian, because Russian people have some weird relationship with Ukraine. Russian people are trying to destroy Ukrainian nation, and it's not only Russians who are pro-Putin Russian liberals. Most of them appear to have some weird like imperialist views, and maybe you've heard a couple of words about imperialism if you're, I don't know, editor in some New Yorker or New York Times or whatever, and you can feel in her article, you can feel it like really hard. For instance, she writes, and it's just words, but it feels that way. She writes about Bucha. You remember Bucha, where Russians committed massacre, horrible massacre, killed lots of people just for nothing, raped women, killed people, and it was like it's one of the most horrible parts of this war. And she writes these words: in Bucha, those who survived the occupation could afford to be picky. Countless foreign dignitaries, had come to visit the ruins and the sites of Russian war crimes. Howard Buffett, the son of the billionaire Warren Buffett, had visited several times and committed $500 million to help in Ukraine rebuild. So in Bucha, those who survived occupation could afford to be picky. That's how you describe the survivals of the massacre.
Genocide.
Genocide. Of the genocide.
Literally genocide.
Of the genocide.
Is she really an expert on Holocaust, or like, memory policy of like, maybe, I hope she didn't write anything like, Jewish people being picky after Holocaust. I don't know. I just hope so. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be
that would be a disaster. She would be canceled immediately, because how dare she? And yet, I want to come back to President Zelensky here. Sorry again. Because the other article here, which was written, I guess, for this poetic and, kind of descriptive part to kind of dwell upon the concept that Ukrainian democracy is in darkness. It says here, for Zelensky, the autumn began badly and ended worse. He and his people have spent most of the war barricaded in the building of the presidential administration on Bankov Street in Kyiv. As presidents do, sit in their workplace. Okay.
Okay.
The block is surrounded by military checkpoints. Again.
Oh, okay. No.
Okay.
During the attempts of assassination of the president.
Yeah, sure.
The full-scale
but screw that.
Whoa.
Impossible, right? The building itself is mostly dark. Pleated drapes are drawn over stacks of sandbags that cover the windows. Because of rocket strikes, missile strikes that currently land in the vicinity. Maybe she lived in Ukraine
during war. Literally, she knew, right?
Literally, rockets, cruise missiles land in Kyiv every other week.
And ballistic missiles.
And Shahed drones.
Yeah.
Anything. And it you can hear them and you can see them from where the presidential administration is. So she's concerned. And she goes, in October, a profile in the Time portrayed Zelensky as exhausted and increasingly isolated, his administration demoralized by a dawning understanding that the war was unwinnable. Let's skip the last sentence, because that the war is unwinnable is completely her assumption. Screw that. This kind of picturesque description that she gives, it's, she's an artist, she's a writer, she tries to give this mood of gloom and darkness surrounding, but everything in this piece that I've read out to you just makes sense in terms of being a president of a country at war. So
where the
out of this article, out of this place, I can learn that president spends his time at his workplace. He has security. And they have put sandbags on the windows in case something happens. Wow, what a
Wow.
deep
No,
wow,
because
what an
she's Russian.
analysis.
In Russia, president spends his time in a bunker somewhere in Novogorova with children.
Literally, she behaves like Putin is all over the place all the time. Need to remind you, Zelensky is sitting like that in a country where there's war. Putin sits like that for 30 years for no reason. Like, literally, have you seen him? Dear Masha, have you seen Putin outside ever? Oh, no. Oh, right. She has seen him, actually. She did go to Kremlin, didn't she, Mark? This is amazing.
Oh yeah, there's a story when she worked as an editor
Editor
for
in chief, yeah.
editor in chief for Russian. Let me open it in 2012. When, by the way, after there's been big Russian protests against Putin, and lots of people were sent to jail after those protests. So it was already after people tried to do something in Russia, actually, and lots of media were shut down. For instance, Lenta.ru was shut down. So it was the final crackdown on the free media, or what was left of free media in Russia. So from the beginning of 2012 to September of 2012, Masha Gessen worked as an editor-in-chief in the magazine Around the World. Then she left the post, and she left the post because they were supposed to go and make a report on, apparently, they were supposed to go and make a report on Putin trying to catch the, what was that bird?
Some bird. Some rare bird in
whatever.
Russia, whatever.
Yeah, he's doing this like stuff all the time, and so she left because of that, because she didn't want to make a story on that or something like that. And then she was invited to Kremlin by Putin because he was a reader of that, and he was upset. She quit the job, and they talked, and they talked pleasantly like for a while, and then he asked her to stay, and then she refused a day later. But anyway,
No, so
yeah,
I guess
that's
for her,
what dissidents do, right, in Russia.
yeah, so much dissident, very wow. I mean, like, maybe she's just used to Putin. Maybe she doesn't like, maybe, I don't know, man. Like,
No,
this is so weird.
it's just like I think it's just ignorance, and it's just like your so she came here, she's not a journalist, she's just a woman.
She's a very opinionated person.
Yeah,
but having an opinion does not make you an expert. This is something that all journalists should really look into. Having an opinion does not make you an expert. It means you're just a person with an opinion. Knowledge actually makes you an expert. Experience makes you an expert. Qualifications make you an expert. Yeah. Opinion is not expertise. Opinions are not facts, and opinions are not news, and gossip is not news. I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah. She came into Ukraine to make this opinion piece, and she had her understanding on what's going on because she read Schuster's Time opinion before that, and so she had her understanding. She had her like idea of this article about like doom and gloom in Ukraine, about democracy going into darkness, about Ukraine losing, about people being desperate, and so she talked to people who were who actually talk to Russians in Ukraine. There are those activists and people who do that for some reason. And so she talked to them, and she took their quotes, and she presented them in the way that they suit her narrative. And then she took some other quotes from the other article which wrote about doom and gloom in Ukraine, and she put those and added her opinion on that, which just confirms her opinion. And that's it. She just came here with this opinion and just made that. She's not an expert. She was wrong in this article like numerous times. She this article is factually incorrect. She presented in a twisted way the things people said to her, some really personal things about like Ukrainian politician Mustafa Nayem told her that he's afraid to think about what's gonna take to end this war. This is what Ukrainians feel actually, but it doesn't mean Ukrainians don't believe in the end of the war. But she took his words, which are very personal, he has his brother who was wounded in this war severely, and she took his words and twisted it and make it look like that's it. Ukrainians don't believe in the Ukrainians think that war is unwinnable. That's it.
The last thing I'm gonna tell you about this article to kind of,
it's just cruel, yeah,
and the reasons why people do things is that this article, I guess, was written on an assumption that she's doing good, right? I guess she had some legal issues with Russia in 2023. Apparently, she is one of the Russians who admitted openly that Russia is waging a war against Ukraine, which, as we know, is prohibited in Russia. There is nothing in this article, nothing, that even implies that the reason why Ukraine is stalling. The reason Ukraine is stalling is not corruption, is not bad warfare, is not bad military.
It's not absence of elections.
Not absence of elections, and not bad or good presidents and politicians. This is not the reason why Ukraine is not moving forward in an expected pace. The reason why Ukraine is not moving forward the way everyone expected to do it is because Ukraine was not given enough resources when they were promised. This is the only reason. There's nothing about that in the article. There is no conclusion and there is no reasoning why the situation is truthfully dire, as it is. Not because of the democracy problems we have. She says herself.
Because of democracy problems other countries had.
Yeah, in the US, in Europe, all of these things. This is very important to understand. We are not stalling because the soldiers on the front line are like, we're not gonna fight because there are no elections and we feel like we are having our constitutional rights suspended. Nobody says that. Nobody. It's a matter of we were not given the resources. And yet there isn't a single piece of that article that even implies that analysis. So what kind of analyst and what kind of expert is she she's so blatantly ignoring the very fact that if Ukraine, and she even quotes Zaluzhny and Zelensky there, and they say that didn't go as expected, yada yada yada. She explains all these things about the conflict of theirs. The issue is, as an expert, as an analyst, as a whatever, she was not driven to the conclusion as to why these things happen. And her conclusion is something about democracy being stalled. It's not democracy being stalled. It's military aid being stalled. And this is the reason why everything is so bad. Had Ukraine been given the weapons Ukraine has been requesting, we would have had elections by now. The one would have been won by now. Isn't that such a difficult conclusion to come if you analyze Ukraine so well? Jesus Christ on a bicycle. I'm so tired of these people talking about Ukraine. Oh my God.
Yeah, sorry, Melania, you're just dumb Ukrainian.
Yeah, right.
Who doesn't understand international politics or military aspects of wars, etc. You're just dumb. Sorry for that. You're not in a position to speak, to make decisions, to do something good in this world. Sorry, and go fuck yourself. Thank you very much, guys.
Please subscribe to this channel.
Subscribe to this channel. Maybe
a far better source of information about Ukraine for an international audience than the New Yorker and Masha Gessen, I promise.
We
fact check, we prepare. We actually are Ukrainians.
You can ask us for an interview. We can speak.
Yeah,
English.
we can actually write a thing for you. Yeah,
we're dumb Ukrainians, but probably we could be useful.
Yeah, we're a bit insane too. But anyway, guys, for more rants like these and for insanity like this, please subscribe to this channel. Please like this video. Please copy the link to this video and send it directly to Masha Gessen and New Yorker Twitter page. And so, I want them to see it. I want them to see it, and I want them to watch the entirety of this video. I want them to have their evening ruined. Yes. I hope she gets offended and blocks me. This is my ambition for this video. Send it to your friends. Don't read stupid stuff. Please check the origins of the authors of articles you see online. Be smarty pants. You are our audience. You are smart. And I guess we'll see you next week.
See you. Bye.